If you own acoustic guitars, and if you love them the way that I do, this right here is as important as any guitar tuner, any extra set of strings, any capo. It's imperative. A few weeks ago, I introduced a young guitar player to Mike Volz, who used to be over at Gibson, now he's retired, and was Chet's luthier, built guitars for Chet Atkins, and is on the short list of my oldest friends in the world. So I introduced him as Dad Volz, because that's just about what he is to me. When I was younger, I didn't think about this nearly as much, but as you grow older, you get some wisdom, and you learn a few things. Now I have a system set up, and I want to share it with you to hopefully help the acoustic guitars out there, because I don't want to see anyone's guitar get into any kind of trouble this winter. With solid body electric guitars, you've got a bit more leeway, although this stuff still really matters. But with anything hollow in particular, and acoustic guitars, you want to monitor the relative humidity levels where your guitars are. When the weather gets cold outside and the heaters come on, the air gets dry inside. This isn't good on guitars. To give an example of the extent of damage that can be done by under, or in this case over humidification, this guitar came apart in a profound way back in 2010. That was the weekend of the historic Nashville floods, and I know for a fact, because I was out there not long after, that at least for a while that guitar was mounted on Kevin Ryan's shop wall out in Westminster, California. Of course, Kevin Ryan, the great guitar builder and master craftsman. I've known Kevin since I was 16 years old, and he's built me 2 guitars. That was the first, and the tone had opened up in the most beautiful way. After about 10 years, with Adirondack spruce on top and Brazilian rosewood back and sides. But it was no match for the Cumberland River, under which it was submerged for 5 days. It's like the cab driver in Spinal Tap when he says, when you've loved and lost the way that Frank has, well then you know what life's about. When you've been fortunate to have had incredible guitars and incredible amplifiers come through your life, and then some kind of catastrophic event, like a fire, or in this case a flood happens, and you realize that something like Danny Gatton's twin is gone. No, not his vintage twin, but my friend Louis Rosano built, from what I understand, 4 amplifiers for Danny early on. They were high-powered twins. Lou decided he liked me for whatever reason early on. As a college graduation present, Lou decided that I was the one worthy of owning one of those amplifiers that he had built for Danny. And the whole thing was arranged between family and our mutual friend, and I was fortunate to have had that amplifier in my life from about 2004 until 2010. Insurance is a good thing. Kirk Sand took good care of me. Kevin took good care of me. Lou couldn't build me Danny Gann's amp all over again. But the thing is, all of that stuff is just a tool. On the other end of the extreme, a few years later, I had a bridge lift during the winter on a 1936 0018. Joe Glazer took care of it, and the guitar is fantastic to this day, but it all goes back to that Spinal Tap cab driver. And just the same way as when you've loved and lost the way Frank has, when you've been through the things I've been through, well then you know what guitars are about. There's a really good chart on Kevin's website that I'll link to where he goes through this from 0% up to 100%, but the short version is 40 to 50% relative humidity, perfect. Down to about 35%, start to think about taking some corrective action, but don't hyperventilate. 50 to 55, don't sweat it, but 40 to 50 would be nicer. One of the main things to consider, and this comes straight from Mike Volz, we've talked about it, he humidifies his entire workshop. Yes, I'm holding a soap dish, I'll tell you why in a second. But one of the things that Mike has taught me that I want to mention here is a big deal is that you don't want a rapid change in humidity for your guitar. So if your room gets too dry, but your guitar is in its case, you don't want to open up that case until the guitar is back in a better environment. It's the rapid change that's really stressful on the guitars. I try to keep things now, to the best of my abilities at least, between about 45 and 50%. It's a really good idea to keep a small hygrometer in the guitar case itself. The way that I take care of things now is a little bit unique because I'm fortunate to have a really good living situation. This is not for everybody. So if this is impossible for you to do, I'll give you some alternatives in just a moment. I take care of the entire guitar room. To do that, I use an Essic Air whole house humidifier unit. It humidifies using the evaporative method, and I do have to clean and replace the internal wick every year or 2. I use a reverse osmosis water filtration system to provide the water that goes into the unit. I then keep it just outside of the guitar room and then monitor the levels within the guitar room with an inexpensive hygrometer that I took the time to test and calibrate a few years ago. So I have a pretty good indication of the true relative humidity within the guitar room. When I leave town, I monitor the levels wirelessly. I have a camera set up on that hygrometer. No, I'm not kidding. and I'm very fortunate to have somebody around to refill the unit as need be. I prepare a lot of water, and oftentimes that humidifier has to be refilled 4, 5, or 6 times if I'm out for a few weeks during the winter. I couldn't do this without other people, and for that, I'm grateful. But obviously my situation is unique, so if you can't humidify the entire area, you can still look after your guitars and have some peace of mind doing things a different way. Here are some products that I've used throughout the years, really throughout the decades, and they're all quite inexpensive. Not all of them are recommended the same, and one is not recommended at all. Most of these options on the table are far better than doing nothing at all. If you don't want to spend practically any money at all, go to Walgreens or any drugstore and get a soap dish. Right here. And then you can take a nail and hold it with some pliers and get that nail really hot. Use a lighter or a match or whatever you have on hand and burn some holes in the plastic soap dish. Inside of that soap dish, place a damp sponge and then place this into your guitar case. Alternatively, you could pick something up like the Hurco guitar humidifier. I got this at the old Cotton Music when it used to be in Hillsboro Village long ago. Open that up, get it damp inside, close it up, and place it into your guitar case. Then there are the products where you're supposed to put something into the sound hole of your guitar. I want to advise you here from personal experience, be very, very, very careful. Something like this, which comes from Planet Waves, I think that's probably all right, because if you look at it, there are some holes on the side, but that bottom is sealed up. Nothing can really happen. Right over here, I never use these anymore. I would have thrown it out, anybody else would have thrown it out, but I saved it because I guess I save things to remember what not to do, and all these years later, I get to show you what not to do. Long time ago, I was going to fill up one of these Oasis guitar humidifiers, and it began to leak. And never again did one of these ever go into one of my guitars. If you have an in-sound hole humidifier, be very, very, very mindful that it's not something that can leak, because if it starts to leak, it could flood the inside of your acoustic guitar. Not good. If I'm going to make a recommendation for what might be best for most people, if you're not going to go the route of having a whole house humidifier, and the issues that come along with that, it's convenience, it's expense, you have to make sure that it gets refilled and that the room itself stays at a nice relative humidity. By far, before I went to that system, the easiest, most convenient, best thing I had was the D'Addario Humidipack. It comes with these 2 pouches. This goes into your guitar and hangs between the strings into the sound hole, but there's nothing to leak. And the other one just goes into the case itself. Taken together, they maintain a comfortable relative humidity inside of the guitar case. There are replaceable packets in here. If you open it up and you take it out, it's been years since I've used this, it would need to be replaced now. But that can be replaced, and you're not messing with something that has the potential to really damage your instrument. So by far, if you're going to go with an in-case humidification system, that's my recommendation, the Humidipack. Apologies to Oasis, I'm sure they're very nice people. It's simply that I want people's guitars to be safe, and from personal experience, I don't feel safe with these. Conventional wisdom is just like I said earlier in the video. It's more of an issue with hollow body guitars, even semi-hollow, and acoustic guitars. Having said that, even with a solid body electric guitar, it still would. An expansion and contraction doesn't care if you're dealing with an electric guitar, or an acoustic guitar, or an L5. So maybe this is just my own abundance of caution and care, particularly given my backstory, but think of something like a Stratocaster with a rosewood fingerboard on it. The rosewood is placed on top, and while I don't believe it was a humidity issue, that gold top Les Paul that I played quite a bit needed quite a bit of service a few years ago because the fingerboard had developed a bit of a hump in the upper registers and was throwing things off enough that I couldn't get anything to sound clean. The entire guitar was fretting out. All I can say is that I wouldn't put my electric guitars in any room that I wouldn't put my acoustic guitars in. A well cared for instrument should last several hundred years. Great instruments have personalities, much like people, and as a lifelong player, the guitars that I've always gravitated towards have been the guitars that I've really, truly formed relationships with. Miles Davis had a great quote, to paraphrase, where he said something to the effect of, "I can tell if a guy's going to play good or not just by the way he carries his horn." As time goes by, eventually none of us escape the need for maintenance. For example, if you own an acoustic guitar long enough, no matter how well you care for it, at some point within its lifespan, that guitar is going to need a neck reset. But hopefully if you play the guitar for about 60 or 70 years, I'm holding out for that to hopefully only be a necessity once or twice within the rest of my lifetime. I've been incredibly fortunate, but also some of the vintage guitars that I've owned already had that taken care of before they came into my life. I love guitars enough that it means a lot to me to take really good care of them. I hope this helps you to take good care of things and look out for them, and I'll see you again the next time.